Hello everybody and welcome back to Malts and Meeples. I'm Petter and yes, as I said in the chat, this is the penultimate episode of my top 100 games of all time. Now the final chunk, 10 through 1, that's going to be coming out in 2 weeks. Not the day before Thanksgiving, but the week following that, just because schedules don't really permit me to be able to do that. Then I have a new bourbon for me. So let's give it a try. Fairly smooth. Yeah, I like it. So, let's see where we kick off here. And we kick off with a number 20, a game that's peeking over my shoulder over here. Heat Pedal to the Metal. This is a racing game, which, I mean, you can kind of tell from the cover, but I really enjoy this one where it has a whole bunch of push your luck with it as you are playing out cards, trying to race into corners as fast as you can. Sometimes you're even flipping cards blindly so that you can continue moving forward, and you're also pushing it so that you can get around the corners as fast as you can, but not so fast that you burn out your engine, because Heat plays with this idea of overheating your engine. If you shift up or down too fast, you're adding heat to your engine. If you go around a corner too fast, you add heat. And those cards just clog up your hand. So you're having to downshift to be able to cool down your engine, basically, and be running it at a slower speed. So if you're in second gear, you're playing out two cards. That means you're not going to go as far. But you can cool down your engine. If you're in fourth gear, well, you can play out a whole bunch of cards. You can shoot down a straightaway, but you're not going to be able to cool it down. There's a good amount going on in this game, and I think that's what I like about it. It's not too simplistic a racing game. I have some other racing games where it feels, Dungeon Cart, for example, it's a little bit simpler. Heat, there's a little bit more strategy as you think about it, especially if you get to the point where you're drafting cards or you're doing, say, a cup. So you're doing a series of races, which I still have to do, but there's 6 tracks. So why not race 6 tracks and see how well it all goes? So that's going to be my number 20, Heat Pedal to the Metal. My number 19 is Planet Unknown. I've actually been playing this one less in person this year, which is a shame. I love this game in person. It's a great game of basically terraforming your planet to go up on different tracks, and how high you get on those tracks, that determines some of your score. How well you can cover and terraform your planet determines some other scores, and that's just kind of the base of the game. But I've been playing it a lot on BGA, which also works really well. BGA being Board Game Arena. And you can play it a couple different ways. You can do it where everybody has the same kind of tech tree and everybody has the same board. And that's just kind of the basic mode. So it's going to be same for everyone across the board. All puns intended. Or you can pair up planets with special corporations that are kind of your tech tracks that you go up on. And each planet, each tech track, they all work differently. And that, for me, is where this game shines. Plus, it has a really fun kind of central, literally central mechanism to it, because you have this lazy Susan that you spin. and everybody has their marker as to what bay is there. It's going to have a couple polyomino shapes, but when it's your turn to be captain, you spin it, and then you decide what you want to have facing you, and that determines what's facing everyone else. So you can be a little bit strategic about it, stick somebody with something that maybe isn't as useful for them, or push for the end of the game, or make sure the game doesn't end. That all comes down to how you want to play it. This is, it's just a fun experience, and there's more things you can mix in as well. And I'm very much waiting for the Supermoon, I believe it is, expansion to come out as well. I back that one for sure on GameFound. So then my number 18 is going to be Clank in Space. Now, I know this probably isn't most people's favorite Clanks. I prefer it to the base Clank, though I have been playing that digitally, and that is a bunch of fun to do. I have yet to play Clank Catacombs, where you build out the map as you go, but let me explain a little bit how this game works, because it's very similar across all of them. You are delving into some area. Clank in Space, you're going through a spaceship, and you're trying to find treasure. As you move around the board, you're doing that with a hand of cards. That hand of cards has cards that may have attack on them, may have money, may have movement, and certainly may make you go clank. Clank are basically your life force. So if you make too much noise, all those clank tokens eventually get dropped into a bag. And whether it's a dragon or a radicus in Clank in Space, they start pulling them out of the bag. There are some just neutral ones for them, but as you pull, you start to fill up your health track, and if it ever gets full, you're knocked out. Of course, you're trying to get in as far as you can, grab the best treasure, buy up the best cards to help keep you moving, fighting monsters, whatever you need to do, and then book it back out. Because if you make it all the way back out, you get bonus points. If you make it close enough, there are people who will just help you drag you out. But in Clank in Space, you're trying to get to life pods after you've grabbed your artifact. If you do that, that's worth an extra, I believe, 20 points. So it's a big point total that you can get. Of course, if you're really shooting for that, you're probably not delving too far into the chamber with artifacts, and you're getting a lower point artifact. Plus, that whole deck building aspect is just fun, and the push your luck element to this game of, do I go in a little further? Do I go in a little further? Do I go in a little further? Okay, I've gone in a little bit further. Let me grab this and get back out. And Clank in Space adds them a little bit more as well. You can't just get into Radicus's chamber and grab stuff. You have to basically hack a couple terminals, get through, and then you're able to get in as well, which that element I like added to the game from just regular Clank. And I also enjoy kind of what happens when one player is out. Since you can finish at different times, I feel like it's a little bit more involved for what the player is. There's no hard, the game is just going to end like there is for Clank. That's what puts it above for me, and I really enjoy deck building games, as you'll see. So that was number 18. Number 17 is going to be ISS Vanguard. This is one of several big story games that you'll see in my top 20. I love these big story style experiences of a game, and ISS Vanguard is one that is really interesting because they give you more freedom than you get in a lot of different games. You're exploring, well, basically a signal was heard by Earth, and translated these coordinates just out in the middle of nowhere where there's nothing in the universe. So the ISS Vanguard and the crew are sent out there, and now you find that there is something there, but you don't know what, you don't know why, and you're trying to figure all of that out. This game also has a really interesting mechanism where there's kind of there are two phases to the game, and each of them matters, which I appreciate. Because you could end up with a game where you're on a planet and that's the important part. Being on the planet, exploring, that's going to drive everything forward. Well, in ISS Vanguard you have that, but you also have the ship phase. The ship phase is going to be where you can research new technologies, you can build new shuttles that will help you get down to the planets easier. You can recruit or get more crew assigned to the different divisions. And you can heal crew who has gotten hurt. All sorts of things like that just they simulate the idea of people on a ship and who have been on a ship for a long time, and just kind of that wonder of exploring more, but also having to survive. So that's number 17, ISS Vanguard. Number 16 is going to be Vampire the Masquerade Chapters. This one is one that I'm currently playing through with some friends and my wife. This is a Vampire the Masquerade story. Something is happening in Montreal, and our group has been tasked to investigate it. There's choose your own adventure elements to it, kind of RPG feel with that. You can decide how your character will play it out. There are tests that you do to see if you succeed on things. There's a ton of story with a number of errors in it, but the experience is just a lot of fun. And then you get down to tactical battles and maps as you move around and you're trying to figure out what's going on in this scenario. Or maybe not what's going on, but how it's going to tie in, what elements of it are going to be part of that bigger story that you're going to really have to remember, or that will get brought back up again. So I'm a big fan of this one. I do have the errata or upgrade pack for it. It's the issue with these stories where there's just so much writing to them. Sometimes it needs that fourth or fifth pass that, because it was already late, it didn't get. So, which is a bummer. But I'm excited to get back to this one even before I get that upgrade pack in. Number 15 is one that is technically not out yet. Metal Gear Solid. So, this one is on the list because I have played it at CMON Expo last year. I had a blast with it. I don't believe the game is changing much. I forget when it's supposed to come out now. I think it's early 2025. And I cannot wait for it to come out because this is a nice balance of a game of trying to complete a mission. You have standalone missions you can do. You have story-driven scenarios you can play through, some of which are solo, which I love. But as you're going through, I'll talk about the one-off scenarios because that's what I've mainly done. As you're going through those one-off scenarios, you have your crew of people in there, and you're trying to figure out how to get through and how to avoid the guards. There are guards. You can shoot them. You can take them out. However, you have a dead body lying there. Other guards will come along and see it. Alarms will be raised if you're spotted by the guards, well, then, or if you just make noise, they'll come and investigate. So you have to really be planning for so much in this game, and being able to just sneak around is a fun element and experience for the game because it feels different. You're doing that tactical grid thing, but it really feels like you need to be smart about the stealth. So I think that it works well. And if you're a fan of the games, this has the characters in it. This has, yeah, a lot of fun to it. Number 14, I believe, coming up here, we have Lost Ruins of Arnak. And honestly, this one may be too low. As I think about it, I love Lost Ruins of Arnak. It is one of my favorite just kind of gaming experiences because it has this thematic element of exploring, well, the Lost Ruins of Arnak, or really the jungle around there, and coming across monsters, finding treasures, writing about what you found, and going up on like research tracks and stuff like that for points, as well as then bouncing, like I was talking about, that exploring element to it, and then buying artifacts or gear. Buying artifacts, finding artifacts, or buying gear and building up a deck, kind of this engine of how you're going to be maximizing your actions, because you only have a certain number of workers and the game is not that many rounds, but there's so many different ways that you can maximize your actions that it is just a blast. And the base box is good. I just want to say that I think the Expedition Leaders expansion is almost a must-have for this game, because instead of everybody being identical at the start, everybody has their own special powers and abilities that you use, which changes up just that little bit of how you play the game, mainly in how you use different resources, that I think is such a strength. I need to play through the cooperative campaign that comes along with the second expansion. I got to play the first scenario at Gen Con in 2023, which was phenomenal. But I want to get back to that. Actually, that might be one that I stream, thinking about it, because it's just a fun experience. And I believe that allows you to play it solo as well. Granted, you could play it solo before, but now it's solo with that campaign. And even that expansion, if you don't want to do the cooperative campaign element to it, it just adds in more cards and more of what makes Lost Ruins of Arnak so good. Then number either 13 or 12, I forget which, we have a Xenos Shift, another deck building game. So technically, so this must be 13. Third deck building game on the list, because we had Clank, we had Lost Ruins of Arnak, and now we have Xenos Shift. Xenos Shift Onslaught is the one that I have here. Dreadmire is basically a similar experience, but this is a cooperative deck building game that is basically Starship Troopers, where you're in space. You have been hired as defense for this corporation who has been mining on this planet, and now there are bugs, and you have to stop the waves of bugs coming in. And each player plays kind of a different side of the base. Each player has their own kind of group of bugs that they're going to have to deal with, which, I mean, okay, cooperative game. You're building up your deck, you're drawing your cards, you're putting out your defenses, you're buying more cards. But there's a couple different things that I really appreciate about this game that I think makes it work so well. The third thing being it's extremely tough. I think I beat it once in probably 10 to 15 games. So I love that difficulty level because you feel like every time a new wave hits, you feel like, oh, I don't have enough to stop this. How am I going to deal with this? And then you build up, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, now we're on to level 2 waves. We were having no problem. Now it's going to be a problem again. So the difficulty is one thing. The other thing I like is you always get money. You always get money to add to your hand each wave. So I believe it's 1, 3, and 6, which means you're always able to buy something, even if you're not drawing other money. And the game is really smart too, because with the money, because you're able to go in wave 2. If you have 3 $1, you can change that in for a $3. And it just helps you balance out your deck of cards in a great way. But you're also never worried that you can't purchase anything, because you'll always be able to purchase something. And they even give you other good ways to trash like weaker characters as you progress up further into it. So that is great. And then I love how interactive and cooperative it is as you face off against the bugs. As one person starts to flip stuff out, they're like, oh, I can't handle this. And I'm like, well, I got a grenade. I can toss that over there so you don't have to deal with it, because that would just run through your troops. Or it could be a situation of like, okay, well, that's going to run through your troops, but you'll be able to stop it. Or there's a paratrooper. You drop it in on somebody else's board. That now goes to their deck. You lose it from yours, but because it's so cooperative, you sometimes want to do that. Or as you're setting up, you might be like, well, I have spots for 4 troops. I have 6 troops that I can play out. Who needs troops? Or I have more weapons or armor than I can stick on my guys. You're not going to be able to get that many guys out? All right, let's give him some armor so that he'll have higher survivability, can take out more of the enemies. So I just love how heavily cooperative the game needs to be for you to do well. If you're not cooperating, if you're not sharing the resources that you're getting in the game, you're not going to have a good time. It's not going to work out well for you. So that's Xenos Shift Onslaught. Then next up at number 12, we have Marvel Champions. This one is Marvel heroes fighting Marvel villains, trying to stop their schemes and beat them up. All while playing out cards, using resources. It's very much kind of that, similar to Arkham Horror or the Lord of the Rings LCG in some ways, but here you're crafting a character deck that's going to interact with and like combo different things together to do big hits to try and thwart the enemy's scheming. And one of the coolest elements for me in the game is each character, or most characters, have 2 sides. You have your hero side and you have your alter ego side. When you're in your hero form, well, the bad guys know where you're at. They're going to try and beat you up. They're going to attack you. They're going to be knocking down your health. And so sometimes you just like, I need to recover health. So you flip over to your alter ego side. So your Spider-Man becomes Peter Parker sort of thing. And now you're like, okay, good, we're set. But now the enemy starts to work on their scheme, and that's going faster. So you're balancing how much damage can I take and dish out and be able to interact with the world as a superhero before I have to flip over, because if the enemy completes their scheme, they win. If they knock you out, they win. So it's this interesting kind of timing mechanism that you have to think about in the game and how you play it. And I just like the thematic element it adds to it as well. It's like, well, if Spider-Man's there, of course the bad guy's going to be attacking him. They're not going to be working on their scheme. But the second it's Peter Parker, they don't know who Peter Parker is. They don't know that Peter Parker's Spider-Man. So, of course, they go back to scheming and pushing it that way. Which, it's this nice little thematic, well, big thematic addition to this game that I think works so well. And compared to other Marvel games, like Marvel Legendary, you feel like you're playing the hero that you're playing. You have Spider-Man specific cards that you can then, you use some of those and you mix in other different aspects, like could be Protector, Justice, whatever it might be. I think there's 4 different aspects that you can use, and it feels like you're playing that character. And then I believe finally, number 11 here, yes, we have Detective, a modern crime board game. This one has just some of the best experience that I had playing kind of a mystery type of game. Well, it is a mystery type of game. You are going through cases. This cover that I have here has 5 cases in it that all interconnect to create one big story. So it's a short campaign, but you need to play in 3 hours every time. And this is a mystery, not like a Clue or something like that, where you're like, okay, I'm doing kind of the mystery thing. I'm just comparing some basic things to figure out who done it. No. This, I played it 3 players, and I'm pretty sure I wrote 2 pages, maybe 3 pages. Well, 2 pages, 1 page front and back of notes at least every time. And there's more interactive elements for it too, because there's some stuff that you can look up online. There's like your computer system that's going to help you run stuff through labs, compare DNA, stuff like that. And then you have your board where you're spending time and you're moving around. There's a Batman version of this. The Batman version, I would say, is not as good as this core box. There's some standalone missions. There's an 80s box. There's a Dune one. So they've used this system a lot in a lot of fun ways. I haven't played all of them, and I would love to get more of them to the table. But it is that 3-hour time commitment. Well, Batman's faster, but like this core box, it is 3 hours, but it is such a great experience. And kind of how I describe it is that it feels like you are in a detective or a crime TV show, but you get to have all the good parts of it. It's not that cliched element to it. I don't know, there's just something about it that works really well, and it works well for those people who want to have that mystery game and to be able to work together on it. But there we have it. There we have my 20 through 11. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you had fun with this. Again, reminder, 2 Wednesdays from now. So not the day before Thanksgiving, but the week after that, I'm going to be doing my 10 through 1. I will try and get that upcoming stream put up so that you can click that notification bell and join me for that. And if you're enjoying this, well, let me know what your favorite game out of these 10 is, or which one you'd love to try.
do that down in the comment section below. And if you enjoy it, so please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel as well. It's the best way to know when I have new videos coming out. Generally, the schedule goes something like this. Mondays around 8 to 8:30 Central Time, I'm doing some solo gameplay. So this might be where I would start doing the Lost Ruins of Arnak playthrough. Then on Wednesdays, I stream at 9 p.m. I'm generally going to keep those streams a little bit shorter, these half-hour type ones. So maybe top 10 lists, smaller solo games, stuff like that. And then on Fridays, my wife and I have started streaming Baldur's Gate 3 here on Malts and Meeples. So 9 p.m. Central Time on Fridays, you can join the adventures of Nina and Karak, a bard and a monk, and see what shenanigans they get up to there. But you don't have to remember all of that. If you subscribe and click that notification bell, it will let you know when new videos are coming up. And if you want to check out other content that I do, I put out an article basically every day of the week on nerdologist.com. Some of them will be recapping stuff like this, but a lot of them right now I'm going through creating different holiday lists for you to think about, like, oh, yeah, what do I want to add to my holiday list, or what do I want to give to somebody else board game wise? I've done a number of different categories, from campaign games to party games in there. So something to check out for everyone, and I'm not done with it yet, so I'm going to be continuing that over the next few weeks leading up to the holiday season. And finally, just kind of a little cross promotion here, I do have a podcast as well. Not about board games, but about Marvel movies, TV shows, comics, stuff like that. 10-minute Marvel or 10-minute Marvel. You can find that here on YouTube or wherever you get your friendly neighborhood podcasts from. But with that, bottoms up.